when we talk about our business, we've talked about the COVID testing business, but outside of the COVID testing, we've talked about our base business. And what we said going into the year, we expected our base business to get back to 19 levels sometime in the course of this year. And we were expecting it in the back half of this year, but fortunately, we have seen it actually get back to growing in the second quarter. So we're encouraged by that.
How big a part of the business is COVID-19 testing at this point?
Well, last year we did in excess of $2 billion in COVID-19 testing, so it was considerable last year. We reported north of $9 billion for the total company, so it was a sizable portion of our revenues last year. And in the first half, that continued. But as we entered this year as well, Sarah, we said our COVID-19 testing business would go down as we saw the recovery, if you will, from the pandemic. And it has gone down throughout the first half. But what we've seen in the last few weeks is actually a bottoming out of our testing. And in the last couple of weeks, and we think it's related to the Delta variant, we started to see a slight increase actually in some of that COVID testing volume as well.
Steve, seeing 40% top-line growth in light of the pandemic numbers that you got last year, I guess, is very impressive and quite surprising. But is that because Q2 last year didn't quite yet have a huge amount of COVID testing and the comps will be much harder for you in the next couple of quarters?
Exactly. Well, for last year, if you remember where we were just getting into the pandemic. Our base business dropped considerably. In April of last year, our base business was down about 50%. And we just started in March of last year bringing up our COVID testing. And today, we actually have around 300,000 tests capacity per day. That was zero back in March of last year. So in the second quarter of last year, base business was down, and we're just starting to bring up our COVID testing.
You mentioned the Delta variant, Steve. Is there any way, or are you working on technology where we can test for the type of variant we have of COVID-19, where that can just pop up in the test?
When we do today, next-gen sequencing for the Center for Disease Control. So we look at positive PCR tests for COVID, and we provide back to the CDC the actual variant. And we see this week the majority of our positives are actually the Delta variant. We do not have a testing capability that variant is known real time, because right now we can only find that through next-gen sequencing, which takes some time to process.
Is there any other testing you're working on related to COVID-19? For instance, do you think at some point we'll be able to test for vaccine efficacy?
Yeah, we actually have a whole portfolio of serology tests that could test for the antibody. And that antibody can be seen in an individual if, in fact, you are vaccinated or if you have natural infection and you recover from the natural infection. And we're looking at making more and more progress against those serology tests to look for the spike protein and see how we can isolate that from the rest of the antibodies to know that's from the vaccine. And also, potentially, as we go forward, look at to see if the memory, if you will, and a response from the immune reaction in the body in the T cells can be tested for as well.